A millionaire single dad stood stunned as a waitress repaired his disabled son's toy, never imagining that her ingenuity would spark a life-changing device and spread hope around the world. Hello, my wonderful viewers. Get ready for a story that will touch your heart. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're swept up by this journey, and leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's amazing to see people joining us from all over the world today. From the moment Amelia spoke those strange words in the diner, William could not stop thinking about Evelyn. All night, he was haunted by the way she had frozen, her voice trembling as she realized the story. A peculiar sensation clung to him that this woman was hiding a crucial piece of everything he had lost: Sophia, the unfinished manuscript, and the faith that had withered over the years. The next morning, he returned to the diner, not for coffee, nor out of habit, but simply to find out, who was this girl? The manager recounted it as if he had been waiting for someone to ask. Evelyn had once been a celebrated children's author in Dallas. She wrote with a voice light as the breeze, yet suffused with deep emotion. Some magazines called her the healer storyteller, but then, after her mother died of cancer, she abruptly vanished, not merely from writing, but from the world entirely. William was not surprised. He had seen it in many people and in himself after Sophia's passing. Loss drains the desire to create, especially for those who write from the heart. That afternoon, when Evelyn returned for her shift, William waited. He did not impose. He simply looked at her, sincerity in his eyes. She sat down unguarded, but still wary. William did not speak at once. He placed before her a copy of Sophia's manuscript and, beside it, the small notebook Evelyn had shown him the day before. Silently, he opened both to the same page-2 passages, identical down to every period. Evelyn was silent for a long while. Her hand rested on the table, trembling. "I wrote that passage 7 years ago," she said without looking at him, "right after my mother's second round of chemotherapy." Her tone was steady yet cold, as if recounting something that no longer belonged to her. "When Mom died, I stopped writing. Every word afterward was pain, not a memory, but a burden. To keep writing felt like clinging to someone who was gone. I was afraid of that feeling." William listened, saying nothing. "I chose silence," she continued. "To live where no one knew I once wrote, to hide this notebook in a drawer, to put on an apron and ask customers what they wanted to eat. No one cared who I was, and I felt lighter." Her eyes reddened, but she shed no tears. Only a long silence filled the space, reopening old wounds. "And then yesterday," she whispered, "when I heard that little girl speak, it was like I was torn apart. That story, that exact line was mine, but it wasn't me telling it. It was her. Somehow, the story I buried found another voice, a girl who can't see yet can feel." She paused. "How could that be possible?" William did not answer. He did not fully understand himself, but he believed one thing: some connections transcend reason, like an invisible thread linking Amelia, Evelyn, and all that Sophia left behind. "That little girl," William said slowly, "hasn't spoken to anyone but me in all these years. But yesterday, she told the story, not repeated it, but told it from beginning to end, in the voice of someone who lived inside it." Evelyn turned to look at him. In that moment, they were no longer strangers, but two survivors, two people who had lost everything, fallen apart, and tucked their hopes away in a hidden drawer. "I don't know if I can write again," she said, her voice choked. "Just the thought of picking up a pen makes my heart ache." William nodded gently. "I don't want you to write for me, nor for the publisher. I only hope you'll write for Amelia. She may not be able to read, but she can feel. And I believe she's waiting to hear the ending from the one who created that world." A wave of emotion flooded Evelyn. She pressed a hand to her chest, where her heart beat faster than usual, not out of fear, but because of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She reached for the notebook, opened the old page slowly. Maybe not today, But she knew she would write, not to escape the pain, but to move beyond it alongside a blind little girl and a father still learning to listen to the unspoken. The wall clock ticked steady beats, blending with the soft clink of a coffee spoon against the cup, composing a familiar melody in the worn-out corner of old Austin. Amid that scene, William Parker sat dazed, like a withered tree in a June breeze. He did not look like a millionaire, no bespoke vest draped over his shoulders, no gleaming gold watch on his wrist. Just a man whose gaze bore the weight of sleepless nights and whose furrowed brow told stories of long, restless hours. Beside him, Amelia, his little daughter, was an entire world, both wondrous and unreachable, a realm he could not enter. Amelia sat quietly in her white wheelchair, dark hair softly framing her tender face. Her milky gray eyes seemed to drift into a reality no one else could understand. Her tiny hand tapped lightly on the wooden tabletop, as if keeping rhythm with a mysterious song only she could hear. Then suddenly, like lightning splitting a clear sky, Amelia spoke, her voice clear yet laden with mystery. She stands before the silver gate, the light from the magic stone in her palm reflecting against the gray sky. Evelyn knew there was no turning back. William jolted, turning to his daughter, his heart clenched. That was not a story he had ever told her, nor was it a passage from any book he had ever published. Yet that name, Evelyn, echoed too clearly, like a summons from the past. In that exact moment, Evelyn Ross, the young waitress with her brown hair tied high and a smile always at the ready, approached their table. She held her order pad in one hand, but her eyes revealed her astonishment. She stood motionless for a few seconds before asking softly, her voice hoarse as if hiding some secret. "Excuse me, did the little girl just say?" Evelyn knew there was no turning back. William watched Evelyn's expression. This was no ordinary surprise from a customer overhearing a nice story. It was the shock of someone recognizing something all too familiar, so familiar it frightened her. And he, William, felt it too, not just because the character's name matched, but because every word Amelia uttered was the opening of an unpublished manuscript. A manuscript written by Sophia, his wife. Sophia, the artist at heart who had once taken Austin's breath away with her poetic, tear-stained pages. Before succumbing to that cruel illness, she left behind an unfinished manuscript. William had never let anyone read it, nor had he touched it since the day she passed. Yet today, through the innocent but haunting recitation of a blind little girl, those words came alive. A chill ran down William's spine. He did not believe in the supernatural, but how could he explain this? Evelyn stood there, trembling fingers flipping through the pages of her notepad. Yet her gaze never left Amelia, as if in those cloudy eyes lay a secret she had lost long ago, and now it was staring back at her. "Could you tell me the little girl's name?" Evelyn asked, her voice cracking. "Amelia," William replied slowly, each word weighted with his soul. "My daughter." Silence enveloped them. Only the whisper of wind through the window slits remained. Then, Evelyn sighed softly, almost a whisper. "That story, no one knew it but Sophia and me." Those words were like an earthquake in William's heart. He gripped his coffee cup so tight, his hand trembled. He did not yet understand what was unfolding. But the instinct of a man who had guided dozens of works to the top of the publishing world told him this was no mere coincidence. This was a door to a secret, one that could revive a career on the brink of collapse and even lead him back to the forgotten memories of the woman he had loved more than life itself. And he knew that door had just begun to open. William had never invited anyone into his office since Sophia's passing, not to preserve privacy, but because that room was stuffed with memories he lacked the courage to touch. Yet this time, with Evelyn, he knew an exception was necessary not for business, but for Amelia. Evelyn entered with quiet eyes, neither surveying the room nor uttering unnecessary words. Before her, in the small corner bathed in soft golden light, sat Amelia. The little girl was motionless beside a wooden table holding a Braille typewriter. Her delicate fingers traced each key as if feeling out a familiar yet strange land. On the shelves, Braille books were neatly arranged, each marked with handwritten labels that William himself had affixed in those first days after Amelia lost her sight. Evelyn did not rush. She pulled a chair close enough without intruding, asked nothing pressing, imposed no agendainstead. She whispered, "Would you like to continue the story from the other day?" Amelia bowed her head slightly, her cheeks faintly flushed. She had never been one to share her thoughts with strangers. William, standing behind them, held his breath. Evelyn did not press. She quietly opened her worn brown leather notebook, placed it on the table, then drew her pen. She wrote a few concise lines, then turned to Amelia with a gentle, unforced smile. At first, Amelia spoke only a few tentative sentences, as though feeling her way through darkness. Evelyn recorded every word in deliberate, careful strokes. Then, naturally, longer passages began to flow. Amelia's soft voice grew steadier. In her narration, the protagonist Evelyn herself stepped into the dark forest, bearing the glowing stone at her chest, searching for her lost memories. William watched in silence. He had tried to tell stories to Amelia before, but she only listened quietly and never responded. Now, the fragments of the child's imagination were woven into a story not by him, but by this stranger who had entered their lives only days ago. Amelia spoke with emotion. Evelyn captured it with the gentle logic of someone who once wrote from the heart. There were no boundaries between them, only a shared current, a world recreated from shadow and memory. In the days that followed, they repeated this ritual. Evelyn came faithfully, bringing no lectures on craft, no theory. Instead, she shared how to listen to the ideas within. When Amelia paused, Evelyn would ask, "What do you think she fears most right now?" Or, "If you were that girl, what would you do?" And each time, Amelia added another piece, bit by bit. It was no longer someone else's story, but her own. One rainy afternoon, while William was sorting papers in storage, Evelyn appeared holding an old manuscript whose pages had yellowed and whose spine was falling apart. She said nothing, simply handed it to him. William opened it. The first page bore the title, "Evelyn, a Song Unfinished." It was Sophia's manuscript. Its plot matched Amelia's recitation almost exactly. William stood rooted to the spot. He had believed this manuscript lost forever. Sophia had never finished it. When Amelia was born, Sophia was often too weak, dreaming strange dreams of a girl seeking light in darkness. Reading each line now, he realized Sophia had been writing about Amelia long before they knew their daughter would live in a world without true light. Evelyn met his gaze, her eyes softening not with pity, but with understanding. That evening, Evelyn brought a small Braille slate. She taught Amelia to spell her own name with her fingertips. At first, Amelia was shy, but soon her hands moved more confidently. For the first time, William heard his daughter's gentle laughter, a whisper of sound that made his throat tighten. Evelyn did not lecture. She stayed beside her, listening, guiding, encouraging. With each afternoon session, William realized Evelyn was doing more than helping his daughter complete a story. She was helping Amelia touch her own self through language, imagination, and belief in the unspoken. William stood outside the door, watching the two of Thimone young woman who had fallen, and one child who had never seen light write the rest of a manuscript he thought had died with Sophia. And in that moment he understood. Evelyn was not only guiding Amelia to finish the story. She was leading him back to the memories of the woman he had loved so deeply, yet had quietly let slip away through those years of regret. Dear viewers, please take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water, then stay with us for the surprises ahead. Comment 1 if you're enjoying the story, so we know you're still here. William couldn't pinpoint when his gaze began to follow Evelyn longer than necessary. Perhaps it was when she tilted her head, listening to Amelia's story, her lashes lowered as if shielding a wound not yet healed. Or when she patiently spelled words with Amelia on the braille slate, each fingertip's gentle caress tightening this father's aching heart. He could not deny it. He admired her, not only for her writing talent, that which once earned Evelyn acclaim and which she had buried away, but because she had given Amelia something he could not, an inner light. Amelia had once been so silent that William believed all language died within her alongside her vision. Yet now, she eagerly recounted chapter after chapter, characters, plot twists, emotional details all vivid as if silence had never existed. And the one who ignited that spark was Evelyn. One evening, when the city lights shone outside and the only illumination in the office came from the desk lamp, William and Evelyn sat opposite each other, editing the final pages of the manuscript. Amelia had gone home with her babysitter. On the table lay the story of the girl bearing the glowing stone, nearing its conclusion. Evelyn was silent for a long moment. She only looked at the pages before her, then slowly set down her pen. Her voice was soft, but carried an emotion that refused to be stifled. "We should publish it." William looked up, searching her face. "This book is Amelia," Evelyn continued. "It is Sophia, and it is hope. If there's a chance for the publishing house to be revived, I believe this is that chance." William did not respond immediately. Outside, a breeze drifted through the cracked window. Within him, two currents clashed on. A thirst to revive the career that had made his name. The other, a fear that if they failed, Amelia would suffer yet another wound. "The investors are pressuring me," he said quietly. "I asked for more time, but they need results. I'm not certain." Evelyn placed her hand on the manuscript page, neither interrupting nor urging. She only looked at him, her eyes resolute, like a small flame burning steadily. "If you fear for Amelia, trust that she is strong enough. But if you fear for yourself, then I cannot help." William met her gaze. Time seemed to pause in that moment. Her words weren't encouragement, they were truth, and that truth left no room for hesitation. He nodded. "We will publish." Those words untied a knot in his heart. Evelyn offered a faint smile, a knot broad, but enough to brighten her face. Reflexively, William reached out, barely brushing the back of her hand. That light touch felt as if it was nothing. Yet in that instant, both of them sensed something shifting within, something quiet, fragile but undeniable. Their eyes met. Silence. No distance remained but the unspoken sincerity between them. William leaned forward and gently kissed her lips as tenderly as Amelia's first storytelling breath. But Evelyn recoiled, just slightly, yet decisively. Her eyes glistened with tears. Her voice caught. "I cannot allow myself to fail again." No further explanation was needed. William understood. She was not speaking of love, but of herself, of the fear that diving into something that had once cost her everything might break her beyond repair if she fell again. She rose, swiftly gathered her notebook, and left the office without a backward glance. William stood alone in the room, the pale golden light unable to warm the void that had just formed. He did not chase her, did not call out. He only felt the emptiness of the unpublished manuscript he had guarded for so many years. From that day on, Amelia told no more stories. Silent mornings returned. She still sat at the desk, still let her hands rest on the braille typewriter, but she did not press the keys. No one could coax her smile as before. William understood. Evelyn had been more than a companion in storytelling. She had been a bridge, a light. The missing piece neither he nor his daughter had ever dared admit they needed. And now, once again, that absence left them both in silence. William had grown accustomed to the silence in his home. Since the day Evelyn walked out of that office, Amelia had retreated back into her quiet world, and he himself was left to wrestle with piling bills, the glaring red of overdue reports, and the cold reminders from investors. But what troubled him most was not the threat of bankruptcy, it was the emptiness in his daughter's eyes, a look that held no hope. He could not let this continue. He could not stand by and watch the fledgling spark of light in Amelia be extinguished. And above all, he could not let Evelyn run away from the very thing that had once saved her passion, the thing she so deeply feared. That evening, William brought Amelia back to the little diner. No warning, no setup, simply walking in, carrying hope like a candle in the wind. Evelyn was clearing the last table, her hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck, her face weary, her eyes distant as if she no longer thought about any story at all. But when she turned and saw Amelia, she paused. The little girl stood there, clutching a sheet of paper. A crude drawing. Three-figure adult man, a long-haired woman, and a child stood beside an enormous book, light streaming from its open pages. No one spoke. Evelyn sat down and gently took the drawing. Her hand trembled. Amelia did not look at her, she only whispered, "She's still waiting at the silver gate." William did not interrupt. He knew that if anything could reach Evelyn now, it would not be persuasion, it would be emotion. At that moment, William's phone buzzed. A notification from the Austin Book Fair organizers. The story Evelyn and the Lightstone has been selected for the main launch presentation. Please prepare to read it publicly. Evelyn read the message. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She reread it, then looked to William for the first time since that evening. He did not smile. He simply nodded, confirming it was real. She said nothing yet. She did not leave. On the day of the book fair, Austin glowed like a cathedral of stories. The main stage held hundreds of people gathered. On the large screen behind Evelyn, the title shone, Evelyn and the Lightstone, based on the narration of Amelia Parker. Amelia sat beside Evelyn, her hand resting lightly on the woman's arm. She said nothing, but her gaze was steady, calm beyond belief. Evelyn stepped to the podium, clutching the very first printed hardback edition, simple yet dignified. She faced the microphone and, instead of looking at the crowd, looked at Amelia. Then she began to read. Her voice was not loud, but it was full of feeling. Each word, each passage carried memories, pain, hope, and something almost sacred. As she described the girl touching the glowing stone in the dark, the entire hall fell silent. And when the heroine rediscovered her mother's memory in her final dream, a soft sob rose from the front row. She closed the book. Tears glistened in her eyes, but for the first time, she did not shy away. The applause erupted and did not cease not just for a beautiful story, but for something deeper, the return of faith. William, standing amid the crowd, could not take his eyes off the two girls, one, his daughter, whom he had once thought destined to live forever in silence, and the other, the woman who had pulled them both from darkness with her own suffering. When Evelyn descended from the stage, William approached quietly so only she could hear. "You didn't just save the publishing house. You saved our memories." Evelyn did not reply at once, but in her eyes shone a light she had lost for so many years, a light born not of acclaim, but of rediscovering herself. She bowed her head, tears rolling down her cheeks, not of sorrow, but because she knew she was no longer afraid to write, no longer afraid to cherish what she had once lost, no longer afraid to step into the world with all that once broke her. Because this time, she was not alone. William stood silently in his publishing office, the place where everything began and once nearly ended. Morning light streamed through the glass window, coating his desk with a soft golden dust. The smell of fresh ink and paper lingered on the tabletop, that scent he had once loved so obsessively, and now it carried an entirely different meaning. No longer did it speak of pressure, of rejected manuscripts or failed plans, but of a true new beginning. At that desk sat Amelia in her wheelchair. Her small hands gripped a carefully sharpened pencil, wrapped in a rough yet warm blue ribbon. It was a gift she had prepared days before, handmade gift for Evelyn. No one had reminded her. She simply knew exactly what that woman had done for her. Evelyn stood beside her. Gone was the timid waitress behind her green apron. Today she wore a tailored vest and held a fresh manuscript. In her eyes there was no trace of fear, only clarity and confidence, the very qualities she had once lost and that had now returned stronger than ever. William stepped forward, his hand slipping into his jacket pocket. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly withdrew, silver pin engraved with an open book, its pages forming three delicate, intertwined paths, the journey of a child who could not see, a father who had lost his passion, and a woman who had once abandoned everything to run away from herself. He looked at Evelyn. His voice was low and hoarse, as if every word carried the weight of the years they had endured together. Together we will share Amelia's story with the world. Evelyn gazed at the pin in his hand, her heart stilled not for recognition, but because for the first time in her life, she felt she belonged to something greater than herself. She nodded, wordlessly, and carefully pinned it to her lapel, her fingers grazing the cool metal as if to etch this moment into memory. From that day on, William and Evelyn became the official co-authors of Amelia's tale. The book was continuously reprinted and translated into multiple languages, but they did not stop there. Together, they founded the Amelia's Words Literary Scholarship Fund, a non-profit dedicated to children with disabilities, encouraging them to write their own stories. They visited schools, special needs centers, hosted read-alouds, and taught creative writing classes in Braille, audio, and illustration. Evelyn led the lessons, William organized the events, and Amelia inspired them all. She didn't speak much, but whenever someone tapped the wooden table, awaiting a response, Amelia would tap back a special signal, meaning, "I'm listening, go on." Thousands of children began to write not to become professional authors, but to discover themselves in each line. That was the fund's mission, not to find prodigies, but to empower imagination in souls once deemed imperfect. One day, after a reading at an elementary school, a boy missing an arm handed William a story typed with his foot. The title read, "The Lamp That Needed No Electricity." William cried at the opening line. "My mother said I would tell my stories with any part of me that could touch the paper." Evelyn fell silent as she listened to the boy's reading, but this time she did not shrink back. She knew the light was spreading from Amelia, from herself, and now from the children they had once doubted could dream. On a quiet afternoon in the office, just as the printer stopped, William saw Amelia writing at her desk. She still held the ribbon-wrapped pencil, tapping the table in rhythm as though weaving a brand-new tale. He asked nothing. Evelyn did not either. They simply sat down beside her 3 chapters of the same book. They were not merely 3 people brought together by a manuscript. They were a team, a small community proving that imagination needs neither eyes to see nor legs to walk. It needs only a heart brave enough to tell what it believes is true. And the most profound lesson they left the world was, every child carries a story worthy of being told. It need not be perfect, only genuine. The story is far from over. For each child who joins the Amelia's Words Scholarship, each new manuscript, and each pair of eyes lighting up when a pencil touches paper, that is a new chapter. And you, who have watched to the end of this journey, perhaps you will write the next part. Thank you for joining us on this story. If it touched your heart, please share it with family and friends in the US. Hit like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know where and when you're watching if you enjoyed the tale.